Hey, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to this video on how to install VMware's vSphere 6.5 and add a VMware Hypervisor or ESXi host to it. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to install it on a hypervisor like it's intended to, and then also how to install it directly onto the VMware Workstation for a lab environment. Now, I don't know for sure, but just from my observations, I've been using ESXi since version 3.5. This is a snapshot I took from a video I uploaded 6.5 years ago, running 3.5. I had 3.5 gigs of RAM, and since that time, with each incremental upgrade, eventually got to the point where they would add new features, but you would have to use vSphere in order to utilize it. But as far as the core functionality, for all the other lab type stuff I was doing, it still worked perfectly fine, and it was 100% free. And that was the case all the way up until 6.0. Now, since 6.5 has come out, they're actually starting to remove some of the features that normally are on there for free. So to me, it seems like they're kind of moving toward a direction for a lab and type environment. It's more geared toward if you want a vSphere or VMware certification of some kind, not other vendors. And what I mean by that, if you look at, this is the cheapest, the VMware vSphere Essential Kit, currently $560 US, and it still doesn't come with, as far as a basic functionality on what ESXi does today up to version 6.0, it seems to have all of that, but then it really jumps if you get the Plus edition, and then even for a subscription-based $260 a year with limited functionality, and there's no perpetual licenses. So point is, vSphere has always been very expensive, and I've always tried to avoid it as much as possible, but it seems as though they're kind of pushing us in that direction. So for those of us that are using ESXi for everything else but VMware certification, might not be a bad idea to start getting more involved, because we may not have a choice. But with that said, I'm going to be using the 60-day evaluation license. So when you sign into VMware, if you don't have an account, you can create one for free, and then go to My VMware, and then you can start new evaluation. And I actually already started one. And then when you do that, you can go to My Evaluations and click on Download Trial. Now, likewise, this will also have any of the free software. Like in this case, I downloaded the hypervisor, which is ESXi, the free version 650A, so I went ahead and downloaded that. And then for the vCenter server trial, you have two options. You've got Windows or Linux, and I'm going to use the Linux because it's an appliance-based, opposed to installing it on top of normal Windows operating system. So once you download that, you can then right-click and mount the device. And since I have Ultra ISO as my default and not the Windows default, that's why the Windows, the mount option isn't on there. But you should be able to mount it, or you could extract it. And once you're in there, go to the VCSA UI installer. In this case, we'll go to Windows 32, and then we can double-click on the installer executable. Now, this is the method that we're going to use to install onto an existing hypervisor. So, as you may have seen, I have these two hypervisors currently set up. The 6.0, which is on a physical server, this one is what's going to host the vSphere server. And then we will add this one that's on VMware ESXi 6.5. This is the one that we will add to the vSphere for centralized management. So here we'll click on Install, and here we have a two-stage process. And the first is just to deploy the initial appliance. So it's going to ask us some basic information. Of course, we have to agree to the license agreement. And you can choose to have an all-embedded services controller, or have the appliance and service controller separate. In this case, we're going to use the all-in-one, just have everything on the same image. And then for here, we can use a fully qualified domain name or an IP address. I do have my own DNS server, but for this example, I'll be using just IPs and not relying on DNS. So in this case, I'm going to connect to this server here, which is 10.10.10.186, and provide the username and password that's already configured on there. Choose next. We'll say yes. And we can give it whatever name we want. Let's call it vCenter 6.5. We'll specify a root password. And choose next. And here we can choose our deployment size, and it will show you the different requirements for that. And we'll choose, I'm going to just use the tiny here and choose next. And where do we want to save it? And I'm going to put this on the VM host file system or data store. And then what IP address do we want to give it? And for the system name, if you give it an actual name, then you really do need to have DNS configured with pointer records, because it's going to look up the IP, see if it matches with the host name, vice versa. So in this case, I'm going to give the system name the same IP as what I'm going to assign it. So 10.10.10.183, and then the actual IP 10.10.10.183, and subnet, and default gateway, and DNS. Typical stage 1 stuff. So here's your generic network configurations, and we will click finish. Now at this point, it is going to upload the appliance. And while this is doing that, let me switch gears and I will show you how to do this stage in the VMware Workstation. So just where we were in your image, there's this file here called vCSA. I'm just going to copy this. There's an OVA file in here. Just going to copy this and move it to, this is where I have all my virtual machines. So I'm just going to paste this in here. And then when we double click on it, it's going to ask us if we want to import this. So I'm going to change this to storage, virtual machines. I'll call this vCenter. And we'll go ahead and import this. And again, accept the agreement. Alright, so here we have both methods currently at approximately the same stage. The OVA is being both deployed via this installer to the ESXi host, and then this one is being uploaded locally in the VMware Workstation. Alright, so the VMware Workstation's already done, but there's one thing. So remember when we filled out that form, there's actually, that was actually a front end of some attributes that are being added to the VMX file. So we have to do that manually in this case. So if I go back and this is our vCenter location that we just set up. If we go to our VMX file, let me extend this so you can see it better. But see, we got the VMX file here. I'm going to right click on it and say open with Notepad. And then, this will be in the description, but this is the extra stuff we need to put in here. So I'm going to put in the password, the IPv4 address. The other one we made 183, so I'm going to make this one 184. The subnet mask prefix, static, DNS server and gateway, and then the root password. So I'm just going to copy this, and at the bottom, paste that in there, hit file and save, and we can close it out. Now at this point, you can go ahead and make any necessary changes. You can see you got all the default. I'm going to use the bridge network adapter just for this example, but if you needed to make any changes here, this is where you would do it. And we'll hit OK. And now at this point, we can go ahead and power on the virtual machine, which will take a little while, but once it's done, then both of these will be in the same state and ready for phase 2. And I will just mention here, if you are doing the workstation method here, you just got to be patient. You'll see this Photon machine login and you'll see some things blip. You got to wait a while. You'll see a vCenter server page with the IP address and everything, but you just got to be patient with it. Alright, and you can see over here virtual appliance, but notice how it just says localhost here. Like I say, you just got to be patient. There's still more scripts and stuff going on in the background. So we'll keep on waiting here. Alright, so phase 1 is completed for the vSphere deployment we sent to the hypervisor. And notice here it says to proceed to stage 2 of the deployment process, appliance setup, click continue, or you can go to this web page, which is I'm just going to copy this for a second, because what you'll see is that what we're going to do over here is go through the web page. So if we wanted to, we can go ahead and close this and come back to this to finish the installation. But just to show you both ways, I'm going to finish the installation of this vCenter server through the appliance installer, and then we'll configure the other one via the web page. But they look pretty much the same. So I'm clicking continue, and we'll choose next. And I'm just going to use my local router for the NTP server, and I don't need SSH enabled. And the single sign-on domain, I'm just going to keep the default, the vSphere.local. And then we'll set the single sign-on password. And we'll say, call the site name VM ESXi. And choose next. And this is just the root password we set up earlier. So choose login, and then next again. And I'm going to uncheck the join customer experience improvement program and choose next. And here's all of our information. Everything looks good there, so I'll click finish. And OK. And then we'll just wait for this to finish the install. Okay, and just to show you, this is now actually fully completed. Now you see how it's got the same HTTPS IP and 5480. So while this is still setting up here, let's go ahead and do that now. Normally I don't use Internet Explorer, but it, Flash doesn't work in Chrome, so and you do need that for the management. Alright, so accept the certificate, and then you can see here we got the vCenter appliance. We'll click on that, and just like we did before, put in the root password we had set up. In this case, it's whatever we set right here. And as you can see, the prompts are pretty much identical. This time it already has this information filled out except for the NTP, because that's what we had in our template. So we'll hit next. And again, we're going to use the same default vSphere domain name, and we'll set the password. And actually for the default site name, we'll call it VM Workstation. It's pre-populated, but you actually have to type it, the vSphere.local, if you're going to use the default, and choose next. And again, we're not going to join the SEEP, and choose next, and finish. Okay. Alright, so the VMware Workstation version is, is not liking me not specifying the domain. Alright, and just so you guys know, I am redeploying this one so we can set up the VMware. Again, this isn't, I guess I should have specified, the reason you would want to do this is if you are doing a specific VMware certification where you would want your vCenter separate from your ESXi host. So for example, here, if you set up multiple ESXi hosts and then you set up your vCenter separate, not within another, not nested within another ESXi host, it just makes it convenient for management. So you can, for example, shut down the hypervisors but not mess up and, you know, disconnect you from your vCenter session. So that's why you would have it in there. But at one point I thought I had it working without DNS, so I may have been missing something on this one, but it should work with our standard deployment on the ESXi host. Okay, and here we go. It says you have successfully set up this appliance. So I'm just going to copy this here and put that into Internet Explorer. Well, actually, when I closed that, it took me here automatically, but this is still in Chrome, so I need Internet Explorer. I recently re-imaged this machine, so you can use Firefox too, anything that will support Flash anyway. So here we have our vCenter sign on, and it's going to be administrator at, and we set our single sign-on domain was vSphere.local, and set up our password. Alright, and here we go. So now we have our vSphere web client interface, and you can see we have pretty much just the 60-day licenses, so it says we have 60 days left. And the first thing we'll do is create a data center, and in addition to like folders and using these things for organizations, you can also use it to have for permissions, so certain users can have permissions to certain data centers to segregate that way. But this one I'm just going to say home lab, and then we can go ahead and add a host, and I guess we can close this here. So you can see right now we don't have anything applied. Sorry, I just got page there. So in this case we're going to add a host, and in this case I'm going to add the host of the ESXi 6.5 we had earlier, and you can see this is at the 10.10.10.105. You can see type is automatically selected ESXi, so 10.10.10.105. And we'll put in the username and password. Choose next. Yes. And currently there's no virtual machines in there, which is why this is blank. Choose next, and then we can assign a license, which all we have is our 60-day license, so we will apply that. And this is where you can set it up where, do you want it to only be edited from the vSphere Center, or still be able to log in locally like this? And by default it's disabled, so you still would be able to modify that. And that's how I'm going to leave it. And we only have the one data center for home lab, so hit choose next, and then finish. Alright, now at this point, This actually just popped up from my other vSphere client session because it installed that new certificate, and so that had changed. You can see right here, installing license, reconfigure complete from VPX user, because that's being managed by this now. And you can see the hardware information based on the devices, and then if we want, we can even add another one, the one that the vCenter is hosted on itself, which was 10.10.10.186. And I'm actually going to sign out of the 10.10.186 vSphere client for a moment here. And you can see here there's one virtual machine already associated with this. Apply the evaluation. And again, we'll choose finish. Okay, so now you can see our vCenter host on this particular server, and on here, if we wanted to, you can go ahead and either deploy OVF templates, create new virtual machines, just like you did originally. Now, and I'll show you, I'm going to sign back into this 186. And you'll see here that it's currently being managed by the vCenter server with IP address. So it's just letting you know that there's a centralized management of this device. And then also one of the things I wanted to show you too, and you can see if you want to configure the hardware specifics, this is where you do it. Now the 105, if we come here and go to configure and storage, for example, and we want to add new storage, notice there's no options for network file systems, NFS. You can see here they both show, data store 1, but if I add a new one, now I can choose network file storage, what version, and do my mappings. So that's what I was saying, how what you used to be able to do, because even in 6.0, this one here, 6.0, if I do the same thing here, go to configuration, storage, and add storage, see I've got network file system as an option right here. So as of 6.5, they've removed that, and I can only assume they're going to take more stuff away as they move more toward this solution. So alright, and then just to finish up on getting the vCenter on VMware Workstation to work, let's go back to that URL now. So now just replace this one here. So instead this is going to be 184 on 5480. And we'll do our setup appliance. Next. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I didn't do that. So like I say, I was pretty sure I've done this before. If this doesn't work, then I really will set up DNS. Alrighty. So this time host name matches up with the IP. I think that's what I missed earlier when I was clicking through that. Now I know these videos are different post editing, but while I'm just sitting here waiting, it kind of got me thinking, if you wanted to see what I would do if I had absolutely had to put in a DNS, I can show you that real quick. Alright, so I am on my home DNS server, and I'm just going to create a new host, and we'll call it VM test /net.local, and let me make it an IP that I don't have lookups for. How about we'll say 172.16.05. Now see how it says create pointer record? It'll probably fail because I don't have that. Yeah, see, couldn't create the associated pointer record. So if you go to the reverse looks up zones and say new zone, and then see primary, and I'm going to say, yeah, for this domain, IPv4 reverse lookup, and it's 172.16.0, and this automatically does the reverse lookup, because you actually have to type it like this if you're using bind, for example. But finish that. So now that there's a reverse record, now if we go back to this and just reapply, it'll put it on there. And now if we absolutely needed to have the DNS, now we could do the NS lookup on the VM test and on the IP to meet those requirements, but this should work as is. Alright, and there we go. So see, now it says you have successfully set up the appliance, and just like the other one, if we close this out, let's see, administrator at vSphere.local. Alright, and there we go. Now this is on the VMware Workstation edition. So between the two, hopefully that will give you enough to get started as far as getting your as designed method or the tweaked VMware Workstation edition for whatever uses you need for it. And for me anyway, I hope they have a more affordable lab type solution at some point, but you know, hey, what can you do? Worst case, you know, you got the 60-day evaluations. So as always, thanks for watching, and again, if you are aware of any more cost-effective and legal way to get licenses for this, that'd be awesome. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.